Welcome! In this short training video, we will be going over the B8 Other budget category, where you can include any remaining budget lines and narrative sections needed to complete your expense-based budget. This category is found on page 8 of the Multi-Year Contract Budget Development Form. Everything in this top section will be pre-filled for you based on what you have already entered on page 1 of this form. Before you begin entering your budget, remember to save your work often in CMS by clicking on the Submit button at the bottom of the budget page. The B8 Other category is for items that do not fit within any of the budget categories discussed in our previous videos. We will first look at the budget lines that may be included within this category. You will see we have entered staff recruitment and onboarding, technology and communications expenses, insurance, occupancy space costs, postage and shipping, family and group events and supplies, training and staff development, indirect cost, non-recurring expenses, and unforeseen miscellaneous expenses. We recommend using the line items listed should they be applicable to your program. The line item or items that you use in your budget must be supported by the work outlined within your work plan. In the PA column, you must indicate for each line item listed whether that item will be charged to the grant as programmatic, P, or administrative, A. In our examples, we have provided charges to both programmatic and administrative. If the item will be charged to both programmatic and administrative, you must create two separate lines. You can see several examples of this type of split charge on the technology and communications expenses, occupancy space costs, and unforeseen miscellaneous expenses lines. Under each budget year, you will list the amount you are allocating for each line item. For most grant awards, your annual award amount stays the same and funds cannot be rolled over to other budget periods. When entering the amount for each line item, be sure to use whole dollars and no cents to avoid any technical issues in completing and finalizing your contract. Each line item should include all anticipated cost projections for each budget year. If your cost projections include items that require bids or quotes, these prices should be factored into your costs. For the unforeseen miscellaneous expenses line, this would remain as a $0 line for each budget year. If something comes up in your budget under B8 Other after your contract is approved and you want to utilize this line, you will need to request a budget spending adjustment to do so. If a line item is only supported by local share or match, you would show this as a $0 line within the budget. This would be similar to the unforeseen miscellaneous expenses line, as it's shown with $0 listed in budget years 1 through 5. If using the indirect cost line, be sure to not exceed the administrative cap listed in the Program Terms and Conditions section of your contract. If, after review, you are unable to determine your administrative cap, reach out to your OCFS program manager for assistance. You should also refer to the contract development instructions for the most up-to-date information about administrative caps. Also, please note that if you are using an indirect cost line, there should be no other administrative lines charged within your budget except for insurance or audit. Now, let's look at the B8 Other narrative that supports this budget. When completing the narrative section, there are several important things to include. Be sure to list items in the narrative in the same order they were listed in the budget. Items covered by local share should also be listed in the narrative and described as covered by local share or match. You can see examples of local share items within the other budget videos. When determining what to include in the narrative, you will need to know if your contract is funded with state or federal funds. You can determine this by reviewing the program terms and conditions within your contract. If, after review, you are unable to determine the type of funding, reach out to your OCFS program manager for assistance. You should also refer to the contract development instructions for the most up-to-date information about the B8 Other budget category. Within the narrative, do not list any dollar amounts unless requested by OCFS, as dollar amounts typically belong only in the line item section. If your narrative includes a shared expense, you must include the shared percentage charged for programmatic and/or administrative expenses. Update the narrative examples that you intend to use with the purchases for your program that meet the dollar threshold. For example, if you pay your electric bill separately from your rental agreement, then you should include this as a utility cost in the occupancy space cost narrative. However, if the electric is included in your rental agreement under the B4 Contractual Consultant section, then electricity should be removed from this narrative. If you anticipate needing to pay upfront travel costs for participants, clients, and trainers that are not part of your agency's personal budget, and this is not included in any contractual consultant agreement, you may charge for this under the Training and Staff Development line. Here are some additional tips. Items should be charged to the B8 Other category only when they do not fit in any other budget category. If you are using an indirect cost line, be sure to upload your current signed Federal Indirect Cost Agreement or your agency's indirect cost calculation into the Contract Management System, or CMS, during contract development. If you are federally funded and using the 10% de minimis rate, no supporting documentation is needed. Once a contract is approved, prior OCFS approval is required if you wish to shift funds to increase the equipment line. Prior OCFS approval is also required if funds will be moved to increase or decrease the personal services budget category. A budget spending adjustment form must be submitted for approval 25 days before purchases are made. We hope you found this video helpful. To continue completing your expense-based budget, please watch the next video.